How's it going, everyone? I'm Trev the Dev, and welcome into Pokemon Soul Silver. Now, there are no shortage of Pokemon Challenge runs across YouTube, and as an avid enjoyer of that type of content, I decided to try a challenge that I've had on my mind for a while now. Question is, can you beat all of Johto's gym leaders and the Elite Four with only level 1 Pokemon? Now, in order to avoid trivializing fights along our journey, I have set a few more ground rules. First, only level 1 Pokemon are allowed in combat. Second, the maximum number of Pokemon on my team must be equal to or less than the opponent's team. Now, Gen 2 and its subsequent remakes in Gen 4, which I'm playing, feature quite a number of gym leaders with small rosters throughout the region, making things a bit more interesting in some of the later fights, especially like Chuck. He's got 2 Pokemon, same thing with Whitney, she's only got 2. Third up, the battle mode must be on set mode. This means there is no switching after we knock out an opponent, unless we have to switch in and sacrifice one of our own Pokemon. Fourth, all Pokemon used in battle must be able to be obtained prior to the Gym or Elite Four fight. Now, this does include any trade or stone evolutions, even if that stone or item might not necessarily be available. I think the only fight that this really mattered in was against Bugsy, where I used a Steelix. Onyx is available. I don't think you can get a Metal Coat prior to Gym 2. Either way. Fifth up is all Pokemon must be legal in-game. This mostly matters due to egg moves, but sometimes, or what you got to keep in mind in Gen 4 is that you can breed a move down from a higher level Pokemon. That means if a Pokemon learns a move, or its evolution learns a move at like level 50, you can breed it onto a level 1 egg Pokemon. Now, I'm kind of giving myself free reign here where I have access to all egg moves, even if you need to do chain breeding or breed with a Pokemon outside the region. But effectively, if you can get this Pokemon in-game at some point on a legal cartridge, we're able to use it. 6, I want to avoid any over-reliance on evasion tactics, as I want to make these fights as repeatable as possible. 7th, no fear strats. Endeavor is an important move, but the Endeavor and Priority combination would pretty much trivialize every fight in the game, except for a couple, like Morty, who obviously has ghost types. And it was more fun to try and come up with some strategies focused on other methods. And then finally, I added a no Smeargle clause, and I don't know if this would have actually impacted the game too much, but seeing as Smeargle can learn every move in the game except for a couple, I thought it might trivialize some fights as well, or I inevitably would have ended up using it on every single team. In addition to these ground rules, I also tried to finish the run with as few Pokemon as possible, and I also tried to limit stuff like confusion and misluck, as well as using a species clause to try and add some variety. And when I say species clause, I mean like I can't use like 3 Ghastlies on the same team. I do have to use quite a bit of repeat Pokemon in one battle to the next, so you're going to see quite a number of Pokemon multiple times. And if you'd like to give this a try after watching the video, I'd love to know if you're able to cut down on the roster at all. I'll give a summary of the total number of Pokemon I used at the end of the video. But yeah, it was fun to do, and with that said, let's jump right in. So first up is Faulkner, and thanks to his team composition, he was probably the second easiest fight in the entire run-through. He's got just 2 Pokemon, the Pidgey and Pidgeotto. And right away you can probably spot the issue with his team. The Pidgey only has Tackle and Sand Attack, and Pidgeotto only has Tackle and Gust, and also has Roost. So the strategy here will be to use a Ghastly with Curse, Substitute, Protect, and Disable, and holding a Berry Juice. An Oran Berry or another healing item would have worked okay, but Berry Juice heals up to 20 HP. A substitute on our first turn allows us to fire off a curse and heal it up with our item, meaning that Pidgey is now on a timer. We want to have these substitute up so we don't get Sand Attack and we might miss with curse down the road. Once the Pidgey falls, it's a similar go on the Pidgeotto. And one thing to mention, as I'm sure you might have noticed, I am playing this on an emulator, so I don't actually gain any experience for knockouts in these fights. It wouldn't matter too much in the later parts of the game, but early on, it actually could make a difference with how low level some of the opponent's Pokemon are, although I really only think it would have mattered in this gym and maybe Gym 2 against Bugsy. Past that, I don't think it would matter. Either way, we wait for the first gust with our substitute up, use disable, then curse, and then it's a waiting game, making sure that we always have a sub up in order to be able to disable gust if we need to. It is possible we could miss the victory if Sand Attack messes with us too much, or if Faulkner were to spam Roost on Pidgeotto, but that doesn't happen here, and we win our first badge on our very first try. Moving on to Bugsy, we face a real troublesome Scyther with U-turn and Quick Attack. U-turn is dangerous as it allows for the hit and switch, and Quick Attack gives it priority, which can always be a bit of a tricky thing in a level 1 run like this. The other members are a Metapod and Kakuna, both with pathetic movesets. Metapod only knows Tackle, and Kakuna only knows Poison Sting, and we can get around both of those with a Ghost type and a Steel type respectively. And just a spoiler here, Bugsy is not the last fight where some of the gym leaders or Elite Four's Pokemon have just awful movesets. Anywho, this time we roll in with a party of 3, which is equal to Bugsy's total number on his team as well. First is a Geodude with Stealth Rock, Swagger, Protect, and Toxic. Next up is Ghastly with Destiny Bond, Protect, Toxic, and Curse. And finally we have a Steelix with Sandstorm, Curse, Rest, and Sleep Talk. The strategy will be this. We want to lead with our Geodude, use Swagger to force confusion on switch in, and set up Stealth Rock, and then we can let Geodude go down. Once it does go down, it's on to Ghastly to face off with the Metapod, because again, it can't touch us, so we fire off a Toxic. Now, both Metapod and Kakuna have the ability Shed Skin, which means we have to re-up Toxic multiple times throughout the fight, as it has a 30% chance of getting rid of any status condition. This is a pretty heavy stall fest, so in hindsight I should have just used Curse and let it go down a bit quicker, but that's not what happened here, and once Metapod goes down, it's back into Scyther. Scyther takes 50% from Stealth Rock, which activates its berry, which means that it will not be knocked out after another switch in, so we have to work around that a little bit more. After its U-turn, it goes into Kakuna, and we respond in kind, going into Steelix. Again, it can't touch us, only knowing Poison Sting, so another massive stall fest here, as we want to Curse to get up to +6 attack and defense. Once we're maxed out, we put out a Sandstorm to start chipping away at its health, and we play a waiting game. After an eternity, Kakuna finally goes down, and it's back to Scyther, who takes another massive chunk due to Stealth Rock. Now, this is kind of interesting. I know Scyther is level 17, Steelix is level 1, but you gotta remember it's at +6, and thanks to its absurd base 200 defense, the AI actually does not see a knockout here, and uses focus energy to fish for a crit. We need what looks like 4 Sandstorm chips to take down Scyther, meaning we'll have to set up Sandstorm at least once more. He hits a Quick Attack for 5 damage, just 5 damage. Again, this is a 16 level difference between our Scyther and Steelix, as we rest up and try for some Sleep Talk luck. We do hit another Curse after Scyther hits the Leer. Next turn we get a little luckier as we are able to set up our Sandstorm once again, although Scyther does hit a Leer once more. We'll wake up next turn and can use Rest once again, so at this point it's just a matter of whether or not Scyther can get a critical hit with its next 2 attacks. We luck out on the first, as it does not on the turn that we use Rest, which brings us back to full health. And unfortunately, Scyther looks like it's just on 1 HP after the Sandstorm, so it still has a shot to take us out with a critical hit. We luck out this time, however, as U-turn leaves us on just 1 HP, meaning we tough it out, Sandstorm takes down Scyther, and we win our second gym badge. I'm thinking the AI must have seen a range here, but luck was on our side this time, and in hindsight, I should have just had a focus sash, which would have guaranteed our victory. But after 8 tries and some different team compositions, I will gladly take the win. Whitney and her infamous Miltank are next, alongside a Clefairy that can throw a wrench in our plans with Metronome. The strategy here is pretty simple as well. We use a Ghastly with Curse, Pain Split, Destiny Bond, and Disable, as well as any random second Pokemon. I actually just used the same Steelix from the last gym, seeing as I think it was the MVP of that fight. We start off with a Curse on Clefairy, as it goes for a Mimic, just getting an attack and defense boost. Next up, we use Pain Split to both drop the Clefairy lower and to make sure that we have our Focus Sash for the upcoming Miltank. Whitney does end up using a Super Potion, so from here it's about Metronome not hitting for an attack, and then Miltank not getting a flinch. You gotta remember that this Miltank has Scrappy, so its Stomp can hit Ghastly. Though it has Rollout as well, so either way we're not immune to its attacks. We do get lucky as Clefairy just uses Miltank. This does make the battle take a little bit longer, but this allows us to hit a Disable, and from this point on it can't touch us for the next few turns as it goes down. The Miltank comes in and actually uses Rollout instead of Stomp, so that means we have a guaranteed victory as we just use Destiny Bond a couple of times and we bring down the cow for our third badge. And this one actually took me 3 tries with Metronome shenanigans. She actually got a U-turn off once, and then I believe it was an Aqua Tail. So this one has a little bit of luck, but 3 tries is all it took. We've featured Ghastly in all 3 of our teams so far, so it's only fitting that we go up against Morty and his ghosts for the 4th badge. Now this fight is actually what inspired me to try this challenge, and is what I would consider to be the easiest fight in the entire game, at least for this challenge's purposes. All of his damaging moves are easily exploitable. So long as we have a substitute up, Curse can't hit us, Dream Eater and Nightmare won't work if we are awake, Shadow Ball can't hit normal types, and Sucker Punch will only work if we go for the attack on the same turn that he goes for Sucker Punch. There are a variety of ways to win this fight, but what I ended up doing is using a dedicated Trick Room setter, this case being Abra, and then a Sentret with Trick, Substitute, Baton Pass, and Rest, holding a Flame Orb. The strategy is pretty self-explanatory and is a bit of a stall fest once again, as a lot of these fights are. We just keep swapping our Flame Orb back and forth, using Rest when needed. So looking back, I think I could have won without an Abra fainting, so long as we didn't get hit with a Curse on the switch. I could have just used Trick Room, taken the hit, swapped into Sentret, and then done the same exact thing. But either way, I'll sit back and let this footage roll, as there's not a whole lot else to say. Morty finally goes down, and we claim our 4th badge, first try. As we move into the back half of the gym challenge, for whatever reason, Game Freak decided to give Chuck just 2 Pokemon. I know I mentioned this at the beginning of the run, but there are some very interesting teams that the gym leaders and Elite Four members have in this game. Now, this normally means you can go with a pretty large and robust squad, which can help you really get the upper hand on Chuck, seeing as he only has the 2 Pokemon. But if you're playing with a limitation like I am, where we can't exceed the total number of Pokemon that the gym leader has, it makes it a little bit more tricky. That being said, I am pretty proud of the team I came up with here. You see, Poliwrath has the ability Water Absorb, meaning that there is another immunity out on the table. This time we take in a Koffing with just the move Grudge, although any Pokemon with the move Grudge would have worked here, as well as a Mischievous with Skill Swap, Toxic, Pain Split, and Substitute. The only real risk here is a flinch with Rock Slide, or if the Primeape decides to go for the Focus Punch. Luckily, he does go for Rock Slide on the first turn, and we do not get flinched, so we're able to hit a Grudge. He wastes a few turns going for Double Team and Leer, but as Grudge is a self-targeting move, it means it can't miss, so there's really no issue on our end. Eventually he does get the KO with the Rock Slide, and in comes the Mischievous. At this point, Primeape cannot touch it. We start off with a Substitute before hitting our Toxic. Substitute isn't really necessary in this point for the Primeape, but we want to make sure we have one up for the Poliwrath later. So we use Pain Split to speed up the process a little bit, and eventually Primeape falls to Toxic. Once Poliwrath comes out, we go for a Skill Swap as the Surf breaks our Substitute, meaning that we are once again untouchable. We use the same process with Toxic and Pain Split to chunk through his health, and we come out victorious with our 5th badge. This time it did take us 3 times due to Rock Slide flinching us twice. It does have a 30% chance, but you will never be able to convince me of that again. Here's where the difficulty starts ramping up due to how some of the teams are constructed. Jasmine is next on our list, and she has 2 Magnemite with just normal and electric type moves. This does mean that with a Ghost and a Ground type, or an electric type with a Volt Absorb, we can PP stall both of them. The problem is she likes switching into Steelix second, so we had to find a way to take it out in between the 2 Magnemites. Here's the team I ended up going with. Ghastly with Curse, Pain Split, Destiny Bond, and Disable. Mischievous with Perish Song, Mean Look, Grudge, Protect, and Cubone with Perish Song, Endeavor, Stealth Rock, and Fire Punch. And hey, who knew that Cubone was able to learn Perish Song? I did not until I was doing research for this challenge, although if you take a look at its place in the Pokeverse, I guess lore-wise it does make sense. This battle starts with an absolute bear of a stallfest, as we lead with Mischievous, as she starts off with one of the Magnemites. We swap the Cubone, and then back and forth it goes between it and Mischievous until Magnemite runs out of Thunderbolts. Once it's out of those, we fire off a Perish Song with Mischievous, although we do get paralyzed in the process. In hindsight, I really wish I would have stalled out all of those Thunder Waves. Either way, we hard swap into Cubone and get confused on the switch, which forces us back out into Ghastly. Now here's where I was expecting the Steelix to come in based on some of my previous attempts. However, this means that we have to start PP stalling the second Magnemite by swapping between Cubone and one of our Ghosts once again. This time I miscounted once again, meaning that Cubone took a Sonic Boom and had to end up using its Focus Sash. We do use a Perish Song that same turn, however, and swap to Mischievous. We get paralyzed, so we can't hit a Mean Look, so she's able to swap back out into Steelix, as the Magnemite would have otherwise fainted. However, I knew she would switch, obviously because we didn't have the Mean Look, so we can do the same thing to bring in Ghastly and click Destiny Bond a few times to end up taking down the Steelix. The only issue here would be if she ended up using Sandstorm, but she did not this battle, and it goes down. Now, as noted in the preview, we can easily swap to waste PP of the Magnemites and get either Cubone or Mischievous in without issues. This time, however, we do make sure that all Supersonics are wasted in order to not be confused, and once Cubone is in with only the Thunder Wave to fear, we finish this battle in a bit of a fun fashion. We get Cubone in, set up Stealth Rocks, and then fire off a Perish Song. Next, it's an Endeavor to drop the first Magnemite down to 1 HP, I know she'll heal up, so I endeavor again. Hard swap to Mischievous, as she does the same to our other Magnemite. Some more PP stalling nonsense to get Cubone back in safely with no confusion risk, and we endeavor Fire Punch to take down the second Magnemite, and then Stealth Rock chip damage takes down the first, netting us our 6th badge. This fight took us 6 tries, as it took me a little bit of time to figure out the best team for the job. And I think if I came in with this team that we came in with on our victory, we probably could have done it first try, but hey, that's what makes this a challenge. After some Team Rocket nonsense, we are up against Price in what was probably the second toughest gym battle, and maybe the second toughest battle of the entire run. Now, the fight is complicated by all 3 Pokemon on Price's team. Both Seal and Piloswine can set up Hail, which can mess up our Focus Ashes, and Dugong has Priority Ice Shard. Now, I tried this with a few different teams, but I ended up setting on a Nidoran with Disable, Toxic Spikes, Super Fang, and Toxic, a Dunsparce with Endeavor, Substitute, Protect, and Dig, and Sunkern with Worry Seed, Endeavor, Leech Seed, and Substitute. And don't you worry, this is not the last time we'll see the Sunflower Seed. This battle begins with Nidoran versus Seal. In all of my attempts, I found that Seal would always go with Icy Wind on the first move, so we use Disable, which afterwards we can set up our Toxic Spikes as Seal goes for Hail. We swap in Sunkern as Hail takes out Nidoran, and right now he cannot touch us unless he goes for Rest and Snore, which he actually never will unless Seal is really low on health. At least that's how it worked in all of my attempts against him. And instead he opts for Snore outright, which obviously doesn't work unless you're asleep. We set up a Substitute and follow up with a Leech Seed as we get back to full health following the Hail chip. Luckily, Disable continues for one more turn as we hit an Endeavor, meaning Seal falls after Hail and Leech Seed with us still at full health after all the damage has been resolved. Dugong is in next and gets poisoned thanks to the Toxic Spikes. We go for the Endeavor and Dugong goes down to Poison, meaning we still have our Sash at the ready. Piloswine comes in next, misses the Mud Bomb as we get our Leech Seed off once more. He hits his second as we fire off an Endeavor, proccing the Citrus Berry, and after Poison and Leech Seed he's left at a Sliver. I know he'll heal up here, so another Endeavor does the job, with Leech Seed taking off the rest of his health. That miss didn't actually matter in terms of victory. It did allow us to live with 2 Pokemon at the end of the fight, but our plan was to come in with Dunsparce and Endeavor, and we still had to Protect in reserve, so either way he would have gone down to a combination of Poison and Leech Seed damage. But it does mean Sunkern was able to live the fight, which is always nice. This fight took the most number of attempts so far, with a total of 10, which was mostly due to Disable running out before we could take out the Seal, meaning Sunkern's Focus Sash would be used up. So really the key to that battle hinges on whether or not we get the extended Disable luck or not. Either way, we leave with our 7th gym badge in tow. After finishing up the rest of the Team Rocket story, we head to Blackthorn, where we get the set to face our toughest challenge yet in Claire. She's tricky for a couple of reasons. First, all of her Pokemon have status moves, except for Gyarados, who has 2 moves that can flinch rather easily. Second, while we can run immunities to Electric, Water, Normal, and Fire, we cannot do all at the same time, while also leaving us room to build a team that can take down all 4 Pokemon. That, and she could end up firing off a random move on the switch that could KO us or hit us down to a Sash, so even if we came in with a bunch of immunities, that point might be moot. And third, both of her Dragonairs have Shed Skin, so status moves become much less reliable. All those factors in mind, here is the team I ended up rolling in with. Mischievous with Trick Room, Destiny Bond, Toxic, and Protect. Mr. Mime with Trick Room, Recycle, Toxic, and Substitute. Sunkern once again with Endeavor, Leech Seed, Substitute, and Protect. And finally, Tangela with Leech Seed, Toxic, Endeavor, and Substitute. The battle starts off with us leading with Mischievous and her sending out her Gyarados. We set up Trick Room and then Destiny Bond, which forces both Pokemon down. Now, Claire would always choose to send out Kingdra second in all of my attempts, so we send in Sunkern, who sets up a Leech Seed on the first turn. After recovery, we start setting up our substitutes, and we get a lucky miss on one of the Hydro Pumps. One of the reasons that this took the number of attempts as it did is we really need a miss from Kingdra here. I know I mentioned it at the top that we don't want to rely on evasion or miss tactics, but I could not figure out another strategy here. Either way, thanks to that miss, we can fire off an Endeavor and bring Kingdra down to a Citrus Berry. The Trick Room runs out, but I know she'll heal here, so I set up a substitute once more. We then continue to play the sub-seeding game, just clicking substitute until Kingdra goes down. It is important that we have a sub up when Kingdra goes down, so we also use protect just to be careful. As the first Dragonair comes in, we hit it with a Leech Seed, and Sunkern goes down after taking down the toughest Pokemon we fought today in that Kingdra. We'll see the Sunkern at least one more time before the run's out, so don't worry for all you fans of Sunkern out there. Mr. Mime is in next, and I start alternating between Protect and Recycle. The only risk here is if she uses Thunder Wave or if she gets a burn with Fire Blast. I did think for a little while to try and figure out if she would heal, and I could set up a sub, but after some deliberation I realized it wouldn't matter either way, so just to play it safe, I went for the Recycle. She ends up attacking, so we did choose correctly in the end. It is also important that we are at full HP when the second Dragonair comes in, so we can set up a Trick Room, and I wasn't sure if we would with how little HP the first one had, so I just used Protect. We do get hit down to our Focus Sash once the second Dragonair comes in, and swap into Tangela, which, by the way, was a huge mistake. I hit the Leech Seed, and Tangela goes down. A Protect by Mr. Mime, once it gets back in, gets us back to full HP, and we can recycle on the last turn of Trick Room. And luckily, my mistake does not come back to bite us, as Dragonair misses a Slam and we can regain our Focus Sash. Now, obviously, the reason I should have not done that hard swap is so that we could have just done some Leech Seeding, Protect, Endeavor stuff with Tangela, with it had a Focus Sash. However, a few more recycles, and we end up winning our 8th badge, although Claire did decide to use a full restore on the Dragonair, which extended the battle, but didn't end up mattering in the end. So again, in hindsight, I should have just let Mr. Mime go down so we could just subseed with Tangela, but seeing as this was my 28th try, yes, 28 tries, I gave myself a pass as we'll chalk that one up to some fatigue. Either way, it's on to the Elite Four. As we make our way over to the Indigo Plateau to take on the Elite Four, I mentioned a difficulty spike before, but this is where things really start to ramp up. Some of these battles are very difficult and took quite a lot of preparation. First up is Will. He is the Psychic type user in the Elite Four. His two Zatus represent big issues for different reasons. The first has U-Turn, and I already discussed U-Turn earlier with Bugsy's Scyther, but it renders Perish Trapping useless, while the other has 3 different attacking moves. Now, Ominous Wind and Psychic obviously have immunities that we can take advantage of, but it is all a moot point when he can just click Aerial Ace and knock out our Pokemon. This one took quite a bit of planning, and after a couple of failed attempts, it became obvious what we needed to do. So the Slowbro and the Executor both have just 2 attacking moves, and we can take advantage of immunities for both of them. Slowbro is the preferred setup Pokemon, as Executor has Reflect and Hypnosis. Reflect isn't really an issue, but obviously Hypnosis can waste some turns. Either way, we end up coming in with a team of Murkrow with Perish Song, Mean Look, Protect, and Whirlwind. Apom with Baton Pass, Fake Out, Protect, and Substitute. Lapras with Perish Song, Block, Protect, and Roar. Mischievous with Perish Song, Mean Look, Protect, and Destiny Bond, and Pineco with Toxic Spikes, and Stealth Rock. You also see in the battle I have an egg in my party. That's just due to how I was setting these teams up. I needed that 6th slot filled, and I wanted to have a placeholder Pokemon, so to speak. Anywho, the strategy is to get Slowbro or Executor out and PP stall, which would allow Pineco to come out and get all entry hazards stacked up. Will always go for U-turn on U-turn into Jinx on the beginning of the battle, so we need to Whirlwind into one of the 2 Pokemon. And fun fact, in Generation 4, Whirlwind actually has a chance to fail on a higher level Pokemon, which is roughly 25% in this battle. I think it's a little bit different based on like the difference between your level and the opponent's level. This was changed from Gen 5 onwards, where I believe it always worked no matter what. Either way, failing the Whirlwind or Whirlwinding into the other of either Xatu would essentially make it so that we lost and pretty much contributed to every single failed attempt that we had with this team in hand. After a lengthy switch fest, we can finally get Pineco in and start stacking hazards. We could have blocked and pair-songed with Lapras as well, but getting the hazards up were integral in the strategy that I was employing. Pineco does what he does and also gets a Toxic on the Slowbro. So once all 6 layers are out, we pivot into Apom, who gets a sub up and Baton passes over to Mischievous. Now this was a mistake in hindsight, however we are not punished and we can go right back into Apom, do the same thing and Baton pass into the correct Pokemon, this time in Murkrow. We Whirlwind the Slowbro out and Jinx comes in, taking half of her HP in Rocks and Spikes, while also getting badly poisoned. We protect once and swap out into Mischievous on the double slap, protect once more, and Jinx goes down. We were hoping for Executor or one of the Xatus here, but we had to play around it a little bit. Next, he swaps into another one of his Xatus, as we just Destiny Bond on the Psychic. One more attack by Xatu, and both Pokemon go down. One of his big threats done, but his second Xatu comes in on the feint, as we send in Pineco to take the hit and fire off a Toxic. There's nothing else we can do but let Pineco goes down, as Xatu takes some chip damage from the poison. Apom comes in next with a Fake Out for another round of Toxic, followed by a Protect. Now, seeing as Xatu had gone for a Psychic a few times in a row, I was banking on the fact that he was going to do it one more time, and indeed he does on the swap into Murkrow. One more round of Protect, and the second Xatu goes down. He could have healed here with a full restore, but based on my experience battling the Elite Four, they tended to wait until their final Pokemon before using a full restore, at least, in the number of tries that I did. Either way, Executor comes in, and it's pretty much a guaranteed victory here at this point, as once again we can PP stall, and Slowbro is already out of attacks, so it's just some swapping around and different status moves. We do swap into Lapras for the hit, but we can then just try to protect a few times for some toxic damage. We don't get double protect, but he actually misses an Egg Bomb, so our third protect works. We take a Psychic down to our Focus Sash, and Executor falls as well. The Egg Bomb missed. It didn't matter, like I said. We could have just swapped in Apom, use Fake Out and Protect, which would have done the same amount of poison damage, but hey, made it a little bit easier. With Slowbro coming back in, we switch into Murkrow to fire off Parasong, which is Mean Look for no real reason, wait for the turns to pass, And it was important that we had a Pokemon with Perish Song left because he did actually end up using a full restore when Slowbro went down into the red. And if we didn't have a Perish Song, the amount of damage that the Slowbro could have done with Struggle would have rendered the rest of our team useless, as Pineco was the only one that could have set up Toxic once again, and it had already fainted early in the battle. Either way, that is our first Elite Four member down, and this Will actually took the second longest out of any opponent in this run, clocking in at a total of 15 attempts. Second in the Elite Four is Koga, and whenever you run into a poison type user, they often have a plethora of poison and normal type moves. Koga is no exception. I want to highlight real quick also the Venomoth and the Crobat in this fight. Now, we can't really exploit either of them in meaningful ways, but you gotta question why on earth two party members in the Elite Four both have 40 base power moves at this point in the game. Now, you can excuse Gen 1 and sort of Gen 2 movesets a little bit, given how early they were and they were still trying to figure some things out. But I think Koga's team here might just be the worst overall late game fight in any generation, just given how just truly awful some of his movesets are. Anyways, on to the strategy for this fight. There are two Pokemon that stand out for us in terms of what we can strategize around: the Fortress and the Muck. Fortress only has normal type moves as well as Toxic Spikes, and Muck only has Gunk Shot and Toxic for moves that can inflict damage. Once either of them come out, we can do some hazard stacking and or baton passing strategies, with some certain team members. Here is the team I ended up using for this fight. We had a Wobbuffet with its standard 4 moves: Destiny Bond, Counter, Mirror Coat, and Safeguard. Ghastly with Curse, Destiny Bond, Protect, and Substitute. Mischievous with Perish Song, Mean Look, Protect, and Trick Room. Quillfish with Destiny Bond, Spikes, Pain Split, and Bounce. And finally, Skarmory with Spikes, Stealth Rock, Substitute, and Whirlwind. The fight starts off as you would expect, with Wobbuffet using Destiny Bond to take down Ariados. The only real risk here being poison from Poison Jab, which actually happened twice before this attempt. Koga then likes to swap into Fortress, so we send in Mischievous. It can't touch us, so he actually decides to hard switch into Venomoth. A Perish Song on the switch, Mean Look, and Protect allows us to take it down. We pivot out to Skarmory before Mischievous also succumbs to the song on that final turn. We chose Skarmory here as we need to use a Pokemon with immunity to either normal or poison, and I want to use Ghastly for a little bit later, so Skarmory it was. After Crobat comes in following the feint, we swap to Mischievous for just a sacrifice. He does go for a quick attack, and we survive for another turn, but it doesn't really change anything, as obviously we can't outspeed, we don't have our sash, and Mischievous goes down. Quillfish comes in next, and we Destiny Bond twice for the knockout. So with just two Pokemon left for Koga, the Fortress and the Muck, doesn't really matter who we switch into. I chose Skarmory as I was anticipating Muck, and indeed the Muck does come out. Again, it can't touch us right now, so we take some time and set up some Stealth Rocks and 3 layers of Spikes, and manage to connect with a Whirlwind on our second try. We swap in Ghastly, who uses Curse on Fortress, as it sets up Toxic Spikes, although it can't do anything else, and both of our Pokemon are immune to Toxic Spikes at this stage. We waste some turns while Fortress does get healed with a full restore, but the Curse ends up taking it down after some time. It is important to note here that we want to have a sub up for when Muck comes in, because we don't have our Focus Sash set up, so we want to make sure we can keep using Destiny Bond until it breaks our sub and connects with a second Gunk Shot, forcing both Pokemon down and netting us another victory. There was a chance here that we could have lost if Muck missed enough times with Gunk Shot, as that would leave us with no PP on our Destiny Bond, and the same thing that we talked about with Will applies here. if we ended up having to waste all of our Destiny Bonds or Muck could no longer hit us, it would just end up being a struggle fest and his struggles would be strong enough to take us out. Either way, it's on to Bruno. As with Chuck earlier in the run, Bruno uses primarily fighting types and a random Onyx for some reason, which tend to have movesets that can be easily exploited in a run like this. In this case, Hitmontop is just straight up hard countered by either the ghosts that you can have at this point in the run, Ghastly or Mischievous, while Hitmonlee can be played around with some switching and a Pokemon with Flash Fire. Machamp can also be neutralized if we can drop Rock Slide's PP down to 0, so Hitmonchan and, funnily enough, the Onyx actually pose the biggest threats, especially if Onyx were to set up a Sandstorm. Although, to be honest, I never saw him do that, or the Steelix with Jasmine in this run, as I think the AI just sees a knockout no matter what move it would end up using. We go in with a team of Mischievous with Perish Song, Mean Look, Protect, and Grudge. Wobbuffet once again with its 4 standard moves. Coughing with Destiny Bond, Toxic, Protect, and Pain Split. Quillfish with Toxic Spikes, Destiny Bond, Protect, and Substitute. And finally, a Vulpix with Spite, Protect, Will-O-Wisp, and Disable. We lead off with Mischievous as Hitmontop uses Dig. I guess it doesn't really see the Levitate here. I was expecting a switch, so I was going to Perish Song, Mean Look, but this works too. We wait the requisite 3 turns and Hitmontop goes down as we switch to Coughing on the final turn of the song. We just wanted to make sure we sent out something with Levitate. Bruno responds by sending in the Onyx here, with the only risk being a Rock Slide Flinch, which he does not get. 2 Pokemon down as we send out Mischievous once more. Hitmonchan comes in, and I debate what to do for quite a while, eventually protecting to see what he was going to do. He bullet punches, and I swap into Quillfish as I want to save Mischievous for the Machamp. Quillfish goes down to a second bullet punch without doing anything here in this battle. Next out for us is the Wobbuffet, as we once again use Destiny Bond strategy, ensuring the last of Bruno's real threats goes down. Mischievous is out once more as Bruno goes into Hitmonlee. We protect to ensure that he wants to try to go for Blaze Kick, which indeed he does, and we swap into Vulpix. Next up is some more switching strategies, wasting PP for High Jump Kick and Blaze Kick, although I should mention here that I thought that High Jump Kick did 50% of the user's HP. Turns out it's actually based on the opponent's HP. Who knew? Once all the Blaze Kicks and High Jump Kicks are gone, we can finally send in Vulpix and hit Hitmonlee with a Will-O-Wisp and watch his HP whittle down. We do want to make sure that Mischievous is out on on the last turn of his Will-O-Wisp so that we can set up a Perish Song. With both Focus Sashes still intact, as well as the ability to use Protect on both of our Pokemon, the only real risk against the Machamp is a Rock Slide Flinch once again. However, he does not get it, and we can stall out the 3 turns, and we take down Bruno on our first try. In hindsight, I could have also swapped to Vulpix once and won with 2 Pokemon left, but either way, this was by far the easiest Elite Four member on this run-through. The last of the Elite Four is Karen, and she probably has the second best team behind Lance in all of the Elite Four and Champion teams. And looking at her team, the only real Pokemon that we can take advantage of with immunities is Gengar and to some extent Vileplume, although we would need to drop down Vileplume's Petal Dance PP, which would be quite difficult to do because of how it works. It's similar to Thrash or Outrage in this generation. Both Karen and our next opponent, being Lance, share this characteristic where we can't really run too much in terms of diverse strategies. It's like PP stalling or some crazy convoluted scheme that I couldn't think of. So we're really stuck with using a lot of Destiny Bond uses at this stage in the game for whatever it's worth. We use 4 of the same Pokemon from last battle: Quillfish, Coughing, Mischievous, and Wobbuffet, although Mischievous does get a special mention as it is using Trick Room instead of Protect for this battle. And our final team member is an Igglybuff with Perish Song, Rest, Protect, and Substitute. We start off with a Quillfish against her Umbreon, and just go for Destiny Bond right off the bat. Same thing for the Koffing against Murkrow. 2 Pokemon down, 3 to go. Mischievous comes out and is up against Houndoom as we pop a Trick Room before Destiny Bond. I wanted to make sure the Trick Room was up here, as I knew her next switch would be into Gengar after trying this battle a couple of times. I'm into Igglybuff next with my goal to stall out her Focus Blast PP. We do get 3 straight misses in fact, although it didn't actually end up mattering. In the long term, it just made things a little bit easier, as we could have substituted 3 times in a row, protected once, and then our Focus Sash would have brought her down to 0 on the Focus Blasts. Although, this way we do have a couple of extra options and a little bit more safety. We rest to regain our Focus Sash, we'll want that again in just a second, and we use Perish Song on Wake Up. We waste a turn with Protect and send in Wobbuffet to get the Shadow Tag, and we know she won't attack here, so the switch in is completely safe. Another hard switch into Igglybuff, and the Gengar ends up falling. Once again, it's elementary at this point, as we hit a Perish Song, follow up with a Protect, and a swap into Wobbuffet. Vileplume does end up hitting itself in confusion, as it only got 2 of the Petal Dances, but it didn't end up making a difference outside of having 2 Pokemon left in our victory, as we could have just gone into Igglybuff after Wobbuffet went down, protected on the last turn of Perish Song, and we would have won the battle regardless. This one, again, was very difficult and took us a total of 10 tries, which a lot of it was me trying out different strategies, not involving just pretty much everybody on my team using Destiny Bond, but unfortunately I just really couldn't see another way around it. And then there was one. Looking at Lance's team, every single Pokemon has at least 3 attacking moves, and only his 2nd and 3rd Dragonites have moves that we can have a reliable immunity to. As I was trying to plan for this team, it really set in that we didn't have any options but to go for Destiny Bond strategies, although we did need to take out his last Pokemon with something else. Again, this kind of lends itself back to my fight against Kieran, where we took 10 tries and we just ended up having to go with a bunch of Destiny Bond users. It's not my favorite, but it is what it is. So this time we went in with Quillfish, Ghastly, Koffing, Wobbuffet, and Mischievous. As Destiny Bond users, a lot of those are some of the same Pokemon we've used earlier in our fights. Mischievous also has the Trick Room set this time. And we see the return of Sunkern once more. The strategy here is pretty cut and dry. We take a hit, use Destiny Bond, take another hit, and then both us and Lance's team goes down. This happens for Gyarados with a Quillfish, his first Dragonite against Ghastly, Aerodactyl against Koffing, and Charizard against Wobbuffet. The Mischievous also goes down in the same fashion, although we set up the Trick Room to let our Sunkern go mono a mono against the final Dragonite. When that is happening, we set up a Leech Seed on turn 1, and then engage in some sub-stalling tactics as he goes for Outrage. He does get 3 full turns of Outrage, however he misses his first Fire Blast, which allows us to set up another substitute. Another turn to Protect, his Citrus Berry pops, but at this point it's all over. He does break our sub, we use Endeavor, and the Leech Seed finishes him off, and we claim our championship over Johto and the Elite Four using only level 1 Pokemon against all Gym Leaders and Elite Four members. Now Lance actually only took me a single try, but it's roughly 50-50 on whether or not we win against this final Dragonite. We either need a Confusion or a Miss. We actually get a Miss, which is a little bit rare of the 2 options, as an Endeavor would have not gotten the KO straight away, as his Berry procs before the Leech Seed damage. I think we might have been able to play around it using Endeavor, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Either way, it's, it shouldn't take more than a couple of tries if you're trying this out. Now, I know there are a whole other set of Gym Leaders in Kanto as well as Red, but I think those are best saved for another time. as I suspect it'll be a lot more of the same as we saw towards the back half of the Elite Four, with just using a bunch of Destiny Bond users. Plus, this video is already getting pretty long. I tried using as many different strategies as I could without resorting to that, but Gen 4 mechanics don't really lend themselves well to this type of challenge. You know, in fact, once you get into Gen 5, Gen 6, all of them with different mechanics thanks to Sturdy and a couple of other moves, you know, Prankster as well as an ability, it would make it quite a bit easier, so I'm wondering if I picked one of the tougher generations to do this. Either way, if you would like to see me try to take on the Kanto gym leaders and Red, feel free to let me know in the comments and I might make a follow-up to this video. I would also like to try this in a different generation, like I said, maybe 5 or 6, 7 or 8, and even 9 now in Scarlet and Violet. And if you want to try this challenge, feel free to let me know how you did. The measure of success that I'd be curious to see is how many Pokemon you used. So I ended up using 19 against the gym leaders and 26 against the Elite Four, which is a total of 45, but I'm pretty sure I could have dropped off at least 1 or 2 Pokemon from my team for a few fights after doing this run through, as again I learned some better strategies towards the back half. Well, I'm not 100% sure, and if you were to do that, you probably would have to get lucky with some misses and stuff, and again I was trying to make these as repeatable as possible. That being said, the gym leaders use a total of 23 Pokemon. The Elite Four use the same number of us at 26. So I guess you could say I was 4 under par for this challenge, to borrow a term from golf. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you would like to see more of this type of content or try it out for yourself, again, please let me know in the comments below. I do have an idea for another Pokemon video, this time being a Nuzlocke that I am almost certain nobody's ever done before. So be on the lookout for that at some point, although I think it's going to take me a little bit of setup to get going. Until next time, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see ya.